Hey there, Grumpy Old Fart here. This is a compilation video of some of my greatest hits. Hope y'all enjoy them. Devil's Den incident from Arkansas. This occurred in 1977, and it happened right around Devil's Den. I want to say it's a state park, yeah, in Arkansas. Two young United States Air Force airmen were camping out at Devil's Den State Park in Arkansas when they noticed a strange triangle of lights in the sky. The first guy was named the main guy here is named Loveless, Lovelace. His last name is Loveless, and the other guy, the article just called Toby. They didn't give a last name, so okay. The night sounds, the crickets and frogs and everything suddenly went silent, and the lights moved overhead, and they could see a black triangular prism as wide as 2 city blocks overhead. The craft emitted a blue laser beam type effect which darted all over them. Lovelace thought that they were being scanned, which if you're a Star Trek fan, that's that's par for the course there. Now after the scan, the two became sleepy. Lovelace awoke and saw Toby peeking out of the tent. The triangle was hovering above a meadow nearby. There appeared to be a dozen children standing in that meadow. Lovelace asked, "What are those kids doing out there in the middle of the night?" And Toby replied, "They aren't little kids. Don't you remember they took us and they hurt us?" I'm going to say that again. He said, "Don't you remember they took us and they hurt us?" Yeah, that's kind of weird. The moment that Toby said that, fragmented memories of being in the craft flooded through Lovelace's mind. Lovelace remembered very little initially, but over the years he had hypnotist sessions, which allowed him to recover much of those suppressed memories. Lovelace has written books about his encounters. I suggest you read them for yourself. Lovelace has suffered enormously over the last 40 years with nightmares and PTSD. He has a phobia of crossing open ground and sleeps with a light and a gun beside the bed. You know, I got to be honest with you. I can't blame him. I'm a naturally paranoid SOB to some degree, but yeah, I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all. I'm not worried about aliens abducting me. If it happens, I'm always armed. But if it happens, it happens. I'm more paranoid about other things. But my contention here is that this happened to you, you'd be a little paranoid too. I'm just saying. Initially, when the United States Air Force got wind of their ordeal, Lovelace and Toby were separated and reassigned. Lovelace ignored his orders and visited Toby, who was suffering severe emotional trauma. Toby asked him, "It happened, didn't it?" And Lovelace replied, "Yes, my brother, it really happened. You're not losing your mind." And that seemed to settle Toby down a little bit. Because it's one thing to experience something you can't explain, but when somebody else experiences it too, you know you're not crazy. You know what I'm saying? It's mentally reaffirming, I guess, for lack of a better word. Now, excuse me. Recently, the government's admission that that UFOs are real has allowed Lovelace a sense of vindication, and rightly so. The part that got me was, at the time when this happened, the government initially was suppressing all of this. They were doing cover-ups and like that. So they, rather than listen to their own people, they separated them and basically told everybody to shut up about it. And that's just crazy. How are you supposed to find the truth about anything if you can't talk about it? You know? I did a video a while back called UFOs Evidently, and in that I talked about that there's going to be lawsuits because people have reported these things forever, and the government and the military shot them all down. Oh no, it didn't happen. You can't talk about it. No, it never happened. It's swamp gas, or it's flares or whatever the hell. These people know what they saw. They're not crazy. They're not stupid. They may be ignorant, but they're not stupid. There's a difference. Ignorant people can be taught. Stupid people are kind of stuck out there. But my contention is, these people weren't either one. And they know what they saw, and the government denied it. The government and the military, their main job is to protect us. So if these people were being abducted after being said, hey, look, we're being abducted, we need help, and the government looking at them like they're crazy, these people have lawsuits. They have grounds for litigation. And this fellow Lovelace and this guy Toby, they've got serious grounds at this point. So, Emilcin abduction, Emilcin, the Emilcin abduction. This took place in Poland. So, in May of 1978, and I hadn't heard of this until just recently, so I had to find good sources and do some research. In May of 1978, farmer Jan Wolski, Jan Wolski, Wolski, Jan Wolski. He was out driving a horse-drawn cart. The date was May 10th, 1978, and it was early in the day. This 71-year-old farmer was going about his business when two short, green-faced humanoid entities, that's how he described them, jumped into his cart and sat next to him. They started speaking in a strange language, and he originally mistook them for foreigners because they had, quote, slanted eyes and prominent cheekbones. The farmer drove his cart along the road listening to their strange language until he came to a clearing where he says a large object was hovering. I'm going to read excerpts from the article that I found, and I don't recall what the article was, and I don't have it here. Crap. Anyway, this is not my article I'm going to read from here. I want to give credit to the people who did. I'm an idiot and forgot to put it on here. Anyway, I didn't put it on. I'm sorry, my bad. Whoever did this article did good work. Okay. According to Wolski, a purely white, unidentified flying object about 14.75 feet, 4.5 meters, and about 16.5 feet in height, and as long as a bus, hovered in the air at an altitude of about 16 feet. There were no notable external features of the craft, lights, joints, that kind of thing. Wolski mentioned that there were 4 objects on the craft made of a black material that appeared to be drill-like in appearance, which generated a humming sound. An elevator-like platform attached to the hovering craft descended to the ground. Wolski then claims that he was taken aboard the ship with 2 additional entities he met near the flying object. He was then gestured to undress, meaning to take off his clothes, and there were about 8 or 10 benches situated around the craft, each the size for one person to sit in. There were some rooks in front of the door which were moving their legs and wings, but seemed to be immobilized. I'm not sure what a rook is. I have to look that up. Wolski claims that he was then examined with a tool that resembled 2 dishes or saucers, and after this he was ordered to redress, and it was then that he noticed that there were no lights or windows on the craft. Only the daylight coming through the craft's door. So it was there, the door was open. Okay. Entities ate and offered him something like icicles, but he refused. The craft's interior was described as black with a grayish tint, similar to that of the creature's outfits. Oh, they color coordinated. Afterwards, Wolski returned home to his family and notified them of what had just happened, urging them to come see the floating craft. He notified they went to investigate the site. Let me start that. He notified his son. He notified his sons, who called to other neighbors, and together they went to investigate the site. The grass where the craft had been had signs of usage on it, being trodden down, covered with dew, and paths coming in all directions. Wolski's sons claimed that there were footprints left behind by the beings, though they did not detail whether the footprints were larger or smaller than their own. A 6-year-old boy claims to have witnessed a bus-like craft hover over a barn, then climb high into the sky and vanish. So there was a corroborating witness. Now here's the fun part. In 2005, a memorial was constructed in Emilson, Poland, at 51 degrees 8 inches north by 2.63 degrees north, 22 degrees 2. Anyway, it gives the coordinates. Anyway, this memorial was constructed to commemorate the alien abduction of Jan Walski. The text in Polish read, "On 10 May 1978 in Emilson, a UFO object landed. The truth will astonish us in the future." That's, to me, that right there says that they took it seriously, and there was something to it. You got a 71-year-old farmer claiming to be abducted, and a little kid witnessing a similar craft in the sky on the same day. Many people are going to stigmatize a UFO witness, try to paint abductees as kooks or nutballs, that kind of thing, and that just irritates the piss out of me. But here's my answer on this one. I honestly don't think a 71-year-old farmer would give two flying fucks what they said. He's got no reason to lie. That's Pierre Zanfretta. But before I get into this video, I want to tell you about the new book that I just got published, The House Off Farrago Road. It's available on Amazon.com, and the author's name is H.L. Anderson. It's just a fun story about a house where the denizens are not quite normal. Mythological creatures and supernatural forces commingle with modern-day law enforcement and the criminal underworld. If the quirky weird piques your interest, check out The House Off Farrago Road, available on Amazon. Alright, now back to the alien abduction video. Pierre Zanfretta. On December 6, 1978, night watchman Pierre Zanfretta was on patrol in Torrogilla. I hope I'm saying that right. Torrogilla, Torrogilla village in Italy. This was a routine patrol for him. Now, whenever I do these videos, these alien abduction videos and the alien encounter videos, I try to pick stories where there's some evidence. All right, multiple witnesses, that kind of thing. Well, buddy, here we go. At around 11:30 p.m., he was checking the garden of the Casa Nostra villa. He entered the backyard and saw an oval-shaped red object. He radioed his supervisors, screaming in terror. When they tried to converse with him as they rushed to him, all he would say over the radio was, "They are not men." The supervisors found Zanfretta motionless on the ground, unconscious. After they roused him, he told them that he had seen several figures approximately 10 feet tall. They were green, frightful, and ugly, and had mottled skin. They had clawed feet and yellow triangular eyes. The other patrols scoured the area but found no sign. However, despite the icy conditions, Zanfretta's clothes were very warm, as if he'd been inside something, like a warm room. Later, the Italian police conducted an investigation. They found two unusual marks in the ground, which were 9 feet in diameter. On December 23rd, 1978, Zanfretta agreed to go under hypnosis. While under hypnosis, he began to remember more. The creatures had taken Zanfretta into their craft. It was brightly lit inside. The creatures had mouths like, quote, like iron, and thorny protrusions on their skin, which was very wrinkly. He said they came from another, according to him, they told him that they came from another galaxy or planet called Teutonia and wanted to establish communication. Now, the police, this story in and of itself is far-fetched, okay? Up to this point, it could have easily been a hoax, all right? But here we go. The police discovered that 52 other witnesses claimed to have seen UFOs that night, and the vast majority of the descriptions matched Zanfretta's description of what he had seen. On top of that, at least one witness saw the UFO head towards the villa, what's it called? The Cosa Nostra villa. Okay? And, at least one witness saw the UFO headed there. So that right there gives a little bit of corroboration. On top of that, Zamfreda's story did not end there. He was abducted again on December 26th. The police discovered large footprints on the ground, some 20 inches long. He was again abducted on July 30th, 1979. This time, the police, here we go, the police injected him with truth serum, and under its influence, he recalled being lifted to an alien spaceship by a green light. Now, you people scoff at hypnosis. People can lie. People can make stuff up. People scoff at hypnosis. Oh, well, they're recanting what they think you want to hear, whatever. Truth serum is a whole different critter. That is a big time plus in my book. If you recant what you say, if you recount what you say under truth serum, that adds another level of realism to whatever you're talking about. I can't imagine somebody being able to fake something like that. Hypnosis maybe, truth serum no. No. That's a whole different critter. So yeah, in my book, Mr. Zamfreda's story is quite legit. We can't actually say this guy got abducted by aliens because we're not sure, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest he might have been. This happened in 1978. Frederick Valentich, Valentich, I'm going to say Valentich. Fred was on a training flight. He was an aspiring pilot. He's out trying to fly, trying to learn how, and he's over the Bass Strait in Australia. The Bass Strait, B-A-S-S. I don't know if it's Bass or Bass. Anyway, he's over this strait in Australia, and he's flying along. He radioed Melbourne's air traffic control and reported that he was being shadowed, by an unidentified aircraft about 1,000 feet above him. So he's flying along, and he sees this thing about 1,000 feet above him. He's shadowing him. It's over him or whatever. And he radios back and he explains, "Hey, there's something following me. I don't know what it is. It's an unidentified craft." And he said it was orbiting around his plane. That was his words, orbiting around his plane. He said it was emitting a green light. So there have been people who have suggested that maybe it was, Venus or something, but it wouldn't be orbiting around his plane. They said it might have been another aircraft, but it wouldn't be orbiting around his plane, So he reported engine problems, and they asked him to describe the craft. So he starts having engine problems, and they're asking him to describe the craft, and he said, "It's not an aircraft." The transmission was then interrupted by metallic scraping sounds. So to me, he hit something or that craft hit him. I don't know. That's what that sounds like to me. Air traffic control then lost contact with him, and they couldn't figure out what happened to him. There were no witnesses as to exactly what did happen. So this guy's flying along. He sees this thing. He's describing it. It's orbiting around his plane, and then he starts developing engine trouble. And then they say, "Well, what does it look like?" And he says, "It's not an aircraft." He says, "It's not an aircraft." His quote, "It's not an aircraft." And then it sounds metallic scraping like he hit something or something in him. There was a 4-day, 1,000-mile intensive search that revealed nothing. There was no trace of him found. So he's gone. The plane's gone. There's no debris, nothing. Now, a lot of people are like, "Well, maybe we're not sure what he saw. Maybe it wasn't a UFO. Maybe it was. We don't know." But now there were multiple witnesses had reports of a UFO in that area at that time. Other people were reporting seeing it. Now, nobody reported seeing him in his airplane. Nobody reported seeing a mid-air collision of any kind. So that's not what I'm saying. But he was there. He reported a UFO with green light. Other witnesses reported a UFO in that area as well. So there is evidence to substantiate the theory, the hypothesis that he may have been abducted. He may have crashed into an alien ship and taken him out into space for all I know. I don't know. But he's gone, his plane's gone, the UFO's gone. The last thing they heard from him was a metallic scraping sound. Take from that what you will. But who knows? Maybe the alien was trying to learn to fly too. I don't know. But he's gone, and he's not back, and prayers for his family, because they obviously miss him. It's not good when stuff like that happens. I would ask the question: was there anybody with him in the plane? Because if he's aspiring to be a pilot, chances are he's still learning. If he's still learning, why is he flying alone? I don't know.
Frank Fontaine case from 1979. I found this one interesting. On November 26th, 1979, 3 street traders in Paris, France. And when I mean a street trader, what I mean is they set up a little booth and they sell stuff on the street. That's very common in European cities. And this happened in Paris, so, Anyway, these 3 street traders were loading their van with clothes to sell. Frank Fontaine, Jean-Pierre Prévost, Prevost, Prévost, and Solomon Ndiaye, N''Diaye, Ndiaye. I'm going to say it's Ndiaye. And I apologize if I butcher these names. Everybody deserves to have their name said right. Anyway, these 3 guys were finishing loading the van at 4 a.m. Fontaine was at the wheel with the engine running when the 3 spotted a UFO. It was cylindrical, about 50 feet across, and was approaching slowly. Prévost and Ndiaye retreated into Provost's flat where the men had spent the night to retrieve a camera. While they were inside, they heard the van's engine roar. They looked out the window and saw the van speeding down the road. Suddenly, the engine cut out and the van came to a halt. When Prévost and Ndiaye checked the van, Fontaine was gone. So, that tells you something, right? That something out of the ordinary was happening besides just the UFO. They searched for him, for an hour, and then they got scared and called the police. The police were unable to locate Fontaine, so they began investigating him as though he was a missing person, which I guess technically he was. Their investigations into Fontaine's finances, his family life, and his history turned up nothing suspicious. They investigated Prévost and Ndiaye. Anyway, they investigated the other 2 guys to find any motivations for murder. Now, there were 2 young women, the girlfriends of Prévost and Ndiaye, that had stayed with them that night, but they had seen nothing, and they were worried about being involved in the things, so the police kind of left them out of it. Well, the story hit the press, and it became a media circus. Ndiaye and Prévost gave interviews, but their stories didn't change. It was the same stories, and they stuck to them, as it were. On December 3rd, 7 days after vanishing, Frank Fontaine showed up at a friend's house. He was confused and had no idea a week had passed. UFO researchers realized the similarities with another case, that of Travis Walton in Arizona in 1975. I did a video on that. Go check it out. But that case was not widely known at the time. So it pretty well eliminated a copycat thing. Over the next few weeks, Fontaine recalled hazy events. He was shown into a dark room by a small figure and made to lay on a hard bed. He remembered seeing a room with machinery along the walls. There was a glowing sphere that floated and spoke to him. Now, Fontaine refused to undergo regressive hypnosis, so that's off the table. The takeaways here are that a man in France disappeared for a week. His disappearance coincided with a UFO sighting. He disappeared from a moving vehicle. Police could find nothing to undermine or disprove Prévost or Ndiaye's stories. This is a classic abduction scenario. Could it have been faked? Of course. Most abductions could be faked. I mean, it's a story. And until somebody comes back with an alien handcuffed to him, or with an alien over their shoulder, or, with a video of the inside of the alien ship, or with some device that they picked up while they were there that could not possibly have come from Earth, then yeah, it's all speculation. But discounting all of these UFO stories, these abduction stories, because some of them are proven hoaxes and stupid, it's just stupid. If because some of them are proven hoaxes, you can't discount all of them because we don't know. Given the number of abduction stories that exist, saying that they are all hoaxes is asinine. It's just stupid. And this guy disappeared out of a moving vehicle. There's witnesses. This is pretty much exactly what happened with Travis Walton. And the Travis Walton case is one of the most famous UFO cases out there. I'm just saying, because it happened in France makes it no less important. Of the Cash Landrum event from 1980.
This is one of the weirder ones, but when I do these, I try to find videos with some evidence, with some physical evidence that we can say, yes, something actually did in fact happen. And this is one of those. On the evening of December 29th, 1980, so it's right near New Year's, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Vicki's 7-year-old grandson Colby were driving home to Dayton, Texas. They had dined out and they were driving home. They went out to eat. They were driving home. They saw a light above some trees, but they paid little notice as they thought it was air traffic from the Houston Intercontinental Airport. The airport was like 35 miles away. They figured it was an airplane. A few minutes later, the light had moved much closer. It had grown much brighter as well. They saw the source of the light. It was a huge diamond-shaped object which hovered at treetop level. Its base was expelling flame and throwing off tremendous heat. So they stopped the car. They got out to investigate. Lundrum quickly returned to the car because Colby was terrified. The kid was terrified, and I can understand that. Cash continued to observe the object. It was the size of a water tower. It was diamond-shaped with the top and bottom cut off so that they were flat. Small blue lights ringed the center, and the bottom periodically shot out flames. So it was something to watch. It definitely caught their eye. The heat was strong enough to make the car's metal body painful to the touch. Cash had to use her coat to protect her hand when she got back into the car. Lundrum claimed that she had touched the dashboard and her hand pressed into the softened vinyl and left an imprint for weeks. Investigators cited it as proof of the event. I don't know if that's proof of the event, but there you go. The object ascended, it rose in the air, and was surrounded by 23 helicopters. Some of them were Boeing CH-47 Chinooks. The encounter lasted a total of about 20 minutes. Now, here's where the proof comes in. The victims suffered nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, generalized weakness, and burning sensation in their eyes. They felt as though they were sunburned. Cash's symptoms included blisters. She stayed outside the car much longer. She could not walk and lost patches of skin and hair. The doctors called this some form of radiation sickness, and that sure is what it sounds like. She got close to this thing. Maybe it was damaged or something. I don't know. But it was throwing off some kind of radiation. Cash was later treated for cancer. So, yeah, this, and the cancer wasn't there before. So they saw this item, this object. They stopped the car. They got out. One of them got back in. They all got sick, but the one that was outside the car suffered much more serious illnesses. What they suffered was akin to radiation sickness. Okay, that has been reported in other UFO encounters. To me, this has a ring of truth because these people had one, they've got no reason to lie. Two,
there's actual physical evidence that they did encounter something. Was it an alien spacecraft? I don't know. The fact that, according to them, it was ringed by 23 helicopters. Yeah, so the government knew about it. Maybe this was some sort of a government top secret aircraft. I don't know. I mean, we don't know for a fact that it was alien, but we know definitely that it was a UFO, an unidentified flying object, because that's the definition, unidentified. We don't know what it was. It was flying, therefore it was a flying object, and it definitely was an object. The fact that the 23 helicopters surrounded it tells me not only did the government know about it, but maybe they were trying to protect it or attack it. One of the two. I don't know. Maybe this was a battle. Maybe it was staged. I don't know. My contention here is the government knows about it, or at least that in 1980 they knew about it. This thing was a real object. It threw off radiation and made these people sick. Gave at least one of them, cancer. So, yeah, if this was an alien spacecraft, that would make sense. If it's a government spacecraft, of a government type of craft of some kind, yeah, somebody's got some explaining to do. That's all I'm saying. And Elias Seixas, Seixas. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Seixas. It's from 1980. The Elias Seixas, I hope I'm saying his name right, because he certainly deserves to have his name said right. The Elias Seixas UFO incident would come to be known as the truck driver abduction and would become one of Brazil's best known cases. To me, this reminded me a lot of the Travis Walton abduction. Let me get into this and we'll explain. On September 21st, 1980, Elias Seixas, his cousin Alberto, and their friend Guaraci, G-U-A-R-A-C-I, Guaraci, were driving in a truck. They were returning from a nearby town. The truck began to experience strange electrical events, and the men began becoming extraordinarily drowsy. Elias felt a pressure on his neck, and the truck lights began turning off and on repeatedly. He pulled over and got out of the truck, feeling as though there was a voice in his head compelling him to do so. Elias doesn't remember what happened next, but Alberto and Guaraci said that he was hit by a beam of blue light. Once they were all out of the truck, the blue light vanished and there appeared to be a forest fire in the distance. The men investigated and found that it was not a forest fire, but rather some kind of object. Gee, just like what happened to Travis Walton and his friends. I did a video on that. Go check it out. The three men headed back for the truck. Can't read my own writing. They got in and took off. Shortly as they drove, Guaraci's hat blew off and went out the window. They stopped to retrieve the hat and were overcome with another bout of sleepiness. The next thing they remembered, they were on a road to a nearby town. All of them felt that something had happened after that they had stopped for the hat, but they couldn't remember anything. Elias sought out a hypnotist and underwent regressive hypnosis to try and piece together what happened. Because of this regressive hypnosis, he remembered being hit by a light which somehow took him inside a ship of some kind. He remembered being laid down on a kind of a bed while one of his friends fought with one of the aliens, even throwing punches. Hey, get you some, man. Another alien watched Elias intently. The beings collected blood and other samples and implanted some kind of device in his skull and his chest. Elias was taken to view what one alien said was one of their bases on Mars. So they took these alien took Elias to view a base that they said was their base on Mars. Elias also saw two men, one black and one white, who were joined at the arm like Siamese twins. He saw several other types of aliens as well before being returned. Now, I don't know what this are they joining black and white people together to see if we're the same race or something? I don't know. We're all human. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the aliens they just don't know. I don't. Anyway, and he said that there was more than one type of alien on the craft. That's another important detail. After returning home, Elias was unable to recognize his own daughter. He suffered impotence for 4 months. Doctors could not explain his conditions, but also found a mark on his chest and calcification on his skull. Experts stated that this calcification could only happen if he had undergone surgery of some sort. He'd also lost a cyst from his hand. His wife said there was a cyst on his hand and for years, and it was gone. Abduction cases like these are pure gold because there remains physical evidence. The fact that he couldn't remember his own daughter and the fact that he was impotent for 4 months, that's a lot. But then you see these marks and the cyst being gone. That's, that right there is evidence. All 3 men stuck to their story for their entire lives. That's also important. Over time, people changed. Okay, we were lying. No, not these guys. These guys all stuck to the same story. On the Andrews family, from this event happened in 1987. In the 1980s, a family named Andrews purchased a home in Slade Green, which is a suburb of London, England. Slade Green. The idyllic house was called Sweetbriar Cottage, and they were excited for their family. They were chomping at the bit to get into this place. Paul and Anne were the parents. They ran a farm, and I don't know if you call it a farm or a ranch. You had livestock, but it might have been a mixture. But the point being, they grew stuff and they had animals. Their son was named Daniel, and their second son was born shortly after they moved in. His name was Jason. So they had one son right after they moved in. A couple months after they moved in, the wife gave birth to another son. First kid was Daniel. Second kid was Jason. A few months after moving in, the Andrews began to believe their dream home may have been haunted. They began hearing strange noises like thumps and bangs with no reason or origin. Electrical appliances, televisions, and lights would turn on by themselves whether they were plugged in or not. Farm animals showed up dead for no reason. Mysterious dark figures would be seen in the fields and in the trees and sometimes looking in the windows of the house. They seemed to be watching the family, but nobody could ever approach them. A few months after Jason was born, Anne found him on the floor under his crib with no explanation of how he got there. On another occasion, she found him across the room under a chair. Still another time, she could not find him and searched the house frantically calling for him. Finally, she heard him crying and found him behind a door in a room that she had already searched. This weird moving of the baby stopped after 2 months. On July 2nd, 1987, Jason's 4th birthday, at approximately 10 p.m., Jason was asleep on the sofa. He had a big day. He was tired. He fell asleep on the sofa. A loud banging on the door, like a big man kicking the door, was heard. Paul rushed, of course, to confront the offender, but there was nobody outside. The door, once he opened the door, the banging stopped, and there was nobody there. At that point, loud thunder began to rumble over the house, and an eerie, unnatural storm started up. A bolt of lightning caused Jason to sit up, wide-eyed, as if in a trance. He began speaking an incredible stream of numbers, huge numbers, fantastic numbers, strange math terms like pi and binary codes and algebraic equations. His family was stunned. The kid was only 4 years old. This was his 4th birthday. They tried to call a doctor, but the phone was out. Suddenly, the storm, the banging, and Jason's talking ceased. Jason quietly got off the couch and headed for the front door. Paul tried to grab him, and Jason responded with, "They are waiting for me. I have to go." As he spoke, the noises began again. Paul grabbed him and held him tightly. Eventually, the noises and Jason's odd emotional state faded away. This convinced them that something strange was going on. The poltergeist-like activity started up again. It hadn't been going on until, between a few months, him being a few months old, and by the time he was 4, there was a period there where it stopped. But it all started up again. But also things like keys, cups, and other items would be inexplicably moved. The clocks would all gain or lose time, but they would do it simultaneously and identically, as though time moved differently in the house. Multiple electricians could find nothing wrong with the wiring in the house, and the mysterious watchers returned. So they had enough of that, and they moved. They packed their shit up and they left. 8 years later, kid's 12 years old. 8 years later, the Andrews were living in another house bordering the MOD land, Ministry of Defense. It's like our Defense Department. They were bordering MOD land with thick trees and woodlands. I mean, it was a very beautiful spot. But they were living there right next to the MOD land. In 1995, the family returned to the farmhouse and caught sight of several watchers in the neighboring wheat field. Paul, at this point, had had enough. He went to confront them. They turned and walked into the woods, and this happened several more times over the next few weeks. Animals started showing up dead. Their caravan, their big RV, had been searched. The stuff in the cabinets had been rearranged. It was a nightmare. In May of 1997, Anne finally got a good look at a watcher. Her description was that of one of the gray aliens. This being was watching her, and it peeking around a tree, watching her, and it disappeared into the woods. She couldn't catch it. She couldn't find it. They began seeing bright lights and waking up in strange places. By that point, the family knew something was wrong, and there had been memory lapses and missing time that they had noticed. The family believed that they had been abducted by aliens. They underwent, Anne and maybe some of the others. I read several articles on this, and some of it was conflicting, so bear with me. I know for a fact Anne underwent hypnotic regression, so they could try to figure out what was going on. Evidently, under hypnosis, Anne confirmed that the family had been being abducted. It had been Anne recalled under hypnosis that she had been abducted as a baby. So it's a generational thing, and it had started before Jason. The alien, and under hypnosis, she also recalled that the aliens communicated that some of their species had been captured by Earth governments and were being tested, medically and otherwise. Some of their species were shot by human soldiers. Jason remembered being, so Jason was abducted or hypnotized as well. He remembered being abducted when he was a baby, which is odd because usually babies can't remember that kind of thing. But the point being, this was a significant event, and it happened over years, and it's generational, which, by the way, happens a lot in abduction cases. So I did videos on alien abductions, not just the stories of the abductions, but on the phenomena itself. If you are experiencing things like this, get some help. Find somebody to help you, because this is a serious thing. The Salter and Son incident from 1988. Evidently, not all alien abductions are traumatic. Here we go. In March of 1988, John Salter Jr. and his son John III were driving down Route 61 en route to a speaking engagement. Salter was a faculty member of the University of North Dakota, and he was scheduled for a speaking tour of the southern states. For some unknown reason, John drove his truck off of his planned route and,
1 hour later, they found themselves traveling in the opposite direction. They decided to stop for the night and continue on their trip the next morning. They thought it was just odd. Maybe they got turned around or whatever. The next morning, they drove on. They were confused as to what had happened, but they discussed it as they continued on their original planned route. Suddenly, they spotted a shining UFO with a silvery, quote-unquote, energy field. The UFO had just appeared over the road that they were on, and they immediately had familiar feelings about what they were witnessing. They began to have flashbacks, which refreshed their memories of the events of the previous evening. They recalled that their pickup truck had stopped in front of this UFO. Both men had stepped out of the truck, and a group of aliens approached them. Most of them were small, like children, except for one, which was taller and appeared half human, kind of like a hybrid. The aliens led them to the craft, and John Jr. felt like they were being protective of him and his son. They underwent a physical or medical type of examination. John Jr. had 3 implants painlessly inserted into his nostril, his neck, and the top of his chest. He felt the 3 implants were tied somehow to the pituitary, thyroid, and thymus glands. John Jr. felt a sense of bonding with the aliens. So this was not a negative experience. I don't know if anybody could go through any kind of an examination like that with implants and think of it as a positive experience, but at least it wasn't negative. That's the main thing. So after they returned home, I looked, I could not find what happened with the craft the next morning. Okay, I couldn't find anything about that. However, after they returned home, John Jr. noticed the father noticed a gradual improvement in his overall health. His fingernails and hair grew faster and thicker, and an old scar faded almost completely away. Also, he was able to easily and quickly quit smoking after struggling for years. For the 2 Stelter men, their abduction had a happy ending and apparently was a positive experience. Again, I don't know how positive that could be, but it definitely wasn't negative, and the effects afterwards were definitely positive. So, take from that what you will. Apparently not all the aliens want to, grab the probulator, as it were, and not all of them want to do that. If all alien encounters were like these gentlemen's encounter, then we wouldn't really have much of a problem, would we? It would be more like, oh, look, there they are again. Or wave at them, that kind of thing. But yeah, if anybody has any more information about this, because the 5 articles that I found weren't real illuminating, I guess. Like, they left out huge swaths of information. So if anybody else has any more information, please put it in the comments. I would absolutely love to read it. It's a fascinating story of how not all alien abductions are bad. Linda Cortile Napolitano from 1989. This is also called the Manhattan Abduction, so keep that in mind. This is one of the more, if you want to look it up, it's also called the Manhattan Abduction. So there you go. This is one of the more compelling UFO abduction cases because of the number and veracity of the witnesses. Here we go. On November 30th, 1989, Linda Cortile, before she took the name of Napolitano, Linda Cortile, C-O-R-T-I-L-E, I hope I'm saying that right, Cortile, was abducted by beings strongly resembling, and we assume to be, the Greys. She was floated through a closed window at around 3:15 a.m. She was levitated from her 12th floor apartment straight up to a waiting spacecraft. Medical experiments were performed on her. She woke up 2 hours later in bed. Now that, in and of itself, that sounds like a lot of other abduction stories, and you can take it with a grain of salt, right? Here we go. 2 years later, she produced an X-ray, which clearly showed a cylindrical object in her nose. This is not the first time we've heard of this either. But when you have an X-ray showing the object there, it's undeniable. It was physically there. Later, the object was removed during another abduction, but the X-rays proved that it had in fact been there. Okay, so nobody's denying that there was an object in her nose. Now, all of this could be easily faked, like a hoax. However, here's the kicker. 2 years after the initial abduction, UFO investigator Bud Hopkins, who was the one that was assisting Linda investigating the thing, he was the one researching the abduction. This guy, Bud Hopkins, received a letter from a police officer detailing an experience he and his partner had in November of 1989. They had witnessed Linda being abducted. These are two police officers in a car witnessing it. They were under the FDR bridge working security for a United Nations VIP. They witnessed a woman being levitated up to a flying disc along with three strange beings. They felt guilty for not helping the woman. One of the officers had a nervous breakdown. The two officers and their United Nations VIP political figure signed a letter stating what they had seen. Now, the VIP did not sign his name. There's speculation as to who it actually was, but we're not sure, so I'm not going to put that in here. However, there was a United Nations VIP there, and he did sign it. So, independently, 23 other witnesses ranging from family and friends to complete strangers later came forward. 3 of these worked for the New York Post. One of them was an investigative reporter. So to recap, 26 witnesses, all in total, saw Linda Napolitano being levitated out of her 12th story apartment up to a waiting UFO. 2 of these were police officers, 1 was a United Nations VIP political figure, and 3 worked at the New York Post, one of them being an investigative journalist. Also, there are x-rays of a strange cylindrical object which later vanished during another abduction. The object was there, it was inside her nose, and it vanished. To me, this case is very, very compelling. You get a lot of this, well, I saw this and I saw that. I was abducted and they probed me. You get all kinds of weirdos out there. I try to sort through them, and I try not to do videos about alleged events that with no proof, or alleged events that are obvious hoaxes, things like that. But you see stuff like this with all those witnesses, all of them with credibility and veracity. You can't ignore it. They saw a woman levitating out of the 12th floor of a building up to a spacecraft. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. There's fake that. What are they on wires? Some guy big up there with a big wooden puppeteer thing? Come on, that's stupid. 26 independent witnesses saw that. You can't make that up.
Karina Siebel, Sables, Saebels. Karina Sables from 1991. This is an alien abduction story. Karina Sables had gotten a divorce, and she decided that she wanted a quiet life for her and her kids. So she moved them to Alder Grove, British Columbia. Now on July 17th, 1991, she and her boyfriend were visiting at her home. She were sitting around talking, everything was good. Her kids were in bed, and they decided to sit on the porch and enjoy the night air. They were talking and laughing, and their boyfriend and girlfriend talking. They do their thing, and she began feeling a strange humming in her abdomen. Her boyfriend felt it as well. They both saw a boomerang-shaped craft move silently over the house and hover there. It was the size of a football field or bigger. Her boyfriend was afraid, and he went inside, telling her to come with him. She decided to stay on the porch for a few minutes, and then, after a few minutes later, the craft disappeared. Her boyfriend came back outside, asking where she had been. She replied that she'd been there for the whole time, which, for her was just a few minutes. He said she had disappeared for over 45 minutes, about an hour. He was angry that she had left the kids
and had no explanation. He was searching for her all over. He went all around the house. He went through every room. He went down the driveway to the end of the walk, to the road there. I mean, a very rural area in Canada, and he was very angry because she, in his mind, she left him alone with the kids for 45 minutes. Now, they were asleep, so that wasn't that big a deal, but still, I can understand his point of view. You know what I mean? Now, he got mad and left, and later on, he did break up with her. But the next day, she contacted the planetarium in Vancouver. They put her in touch with the UFO Reporting Center in British Columbia. There were 15 other reports of the same boomerang-shaped craft that night. The fact that she had disappeared for an hour and he had searched for her is an indication of missing time and UFO abduction. I've done videos on missing time, please, or at least one video on it. Go check that out. This has all the indicators of a classic UFO abduction case. Now, later on, she underwent hypnotic regression and discovered that she had, in fact, been abducted. Furthermore, she had been abducted for years. This had been happening for years. Since she was a little kid, a little girl. Apparently, her mother has also been abducted as well. She's an abductee. Many abductees report generational abductions within their family. So this isn't just one person on one night being taken and studied and brought back. This started when she was a little girl, and it started with her mother when her mother was a little girl. So these aliens, or whatever they are, I'm going to say aliens because we don't know, are taking these people for their entire lives over and over and over, studying them, and then studying their children as well. Now, I cannot claim to have ever been abducted by aliens. I wouldn't, to the best of my knowledge, I have not. I'm as weird as hell, but I'm not an alien abductee that I know of. But I'm going to tell you something. If one of them damn aliens comes after my kid, I got all kinds of party gifts for them in all kinds of calibers. They ain't getting my kid. When somebody goes after you, it's one thing. When they go after your family, that's a whole different critter right there. Because if these aliens hold true to form, that means at some point they're going to be going after her kids. That ain't cool. That ain't cool at all. Do some more research on this particular video. Karina Sabels, Saebels, and find out for yourself. Because again, coming after you is one thing. Family should be off limits for anyone, including these aliens.
Case from 2001. The abduction of Amy Rylance. R-Y-L-A-N-C-E. Rylance. I'm not sure how you pronounce her name, but I'm going to say Rylance. Anyway, and I apologize because everybody deserves to have their name said right. Alright, let me get into this. Amy and Keith Rylance and their business partner Petra Heller were working on their business, the Whispering Winds Winery in Queensland, Australia. Keith and Petra had gone to bed while Amy stayed up watching television. She ended up falling asleep. There was a big storm raging outside, and she fell asleep right there watching TV. Well, at 11:15, Petra Heller woke up. She went into the front room. Her screams woke up Keith, and he bolted away. He ran into the front room and saw Petra in shock. He could not get her to respond, so he searched for Amy, but could not find her. He couldn't find her anywhere. Finally, he was able to get Petra calmed down, and she related what had happened. She saw a rectangular beam of light levitating Amy up to a waiting disc-shaped UFO. The window was broken, the screens were torn, bushes outside were burned, so it was obvious something did happen here. Keith called the police at 11:40. The police searched the area and could not find Amy Rylance. Here's where it gets weird. While the police were still at the house doing their like it didn't get weird before. Sorry. While the police were still at the house investigating their initial investigation, doing their initial investigation, the phone rang. The caller said that Amy Rylance had been found in the town of Mackay in Australia, which is 800 kilometers or 500 miles away. Amy had awakened in an area with trees. She'd walked for a long time and found a road. Following the road, she eventually found a petrol station, gas station. This is Australia, remember, where she received water and was taken to a hospital. Amy was confused, dehydrated, sore, and lethargic. The Mackay police put her into a motel while they waited to try to sort things out. Amy said she'd awakened in a strange rectangular room. This is what she said during the abduction. She'd awakened in a strange rectangular room. A voice told her to be calm. Then a, quote, guy entered and repeated for her to be calm. The man said he was going to return her nearby because, quote, the lights were wrong. The lights were wrong, and it was not safe at the winery. This is what the guy said. They're going to return her, but they got to go. They can't put her back where she was. They're going to put her nearby because the lights were wrong and it wasn't safe. Could it possibly be that they were afraid that the police were there? You never know. Anyway, Amy fell asleep again and then awakened when she was in the trees. That's when she woke up in the trees. Amy had experienced time. Her hair had grown and she was suffering from dehydration. Now, what I mean by her hair had grown, she dyed her hair blonde, and between the time she was abducted and the time that she was at the hospital, her hair had grown and the black roots or the dark roots were showing. Okay. Keith and Petra drove the 8 hours to pick Amy up. And when they got there, they contacted a UFO research group. Keith wanted to contact the media against the advice of the UFO researchers. So, that right there makes me kind of leery about any story, people who want to get famous off of it. However, here are some facts that cannot be denied. First, Amy had strange triangular marks on her inner right thigh and on both heels. Amy's hair had grown, showing her dark roots under her blonde hair dye. Doctors at the hospital stated that Amy had not eaten for days and was very dehydrated. Somehow, Amy had traveled 500 miles in a few hours, but had spent more than 3 days there in the same amount of time. So, it was not missing time. It was like, it's going to sound weird, she was abducted and then she reappeared 500 miles away within a few hours. But in that time, she had experienced 3 days. So there's time dilation of some type going on. Keith reported being chased later on. Keith reported being chased by men in black, quote unquote men in black, in a 4-wheel drive van. Shortly afterwards, all three of these people disappeared. Neither Amy, Keith, or Petra have been seen since 2001. Now, this is one of those stories that makes you wonder, because the damage to the house could have been faked. I mean, that you can hoax that. The damage to the a lot of this could easily be hoaxed. But you get to where she had been in the trees and like that for 3 days at least, where her hair had grown and she was dehydrated. Yeah, that tells me something was going on. And the marks on her body, her thigh and her heels, something happened there. You don't know what, but something happened, and it bears further investigation. Now, when we say these 3 people have disappeared and haven't been seen since then, we don't know what happened to them. Were they abducted by the men in black? Are they living with the aliens somewhere? Are they just under the radar and hiding because they don't want to be seen? We don't know. But the fact of the matter is, they're gone and nobody knows where they are. At least nobody that's coming forward. So,
Terrell Copeland, from 2007. Many people do not believe that aliens are coming to Earth and abducting people for the express purpose of medical examination or experimentation, or for some kind of horrid breeding program. And let's face it, that does sound a bit ludicrous, a bit far-fetched. Of course, that is until it happens to you. Terrell Copeland was one of those people who dismissed those who claimed to encounter these aliens as crackpots or kooks. He really didn't believe. He was not a believer. Being a U.S. Marine, he's a very grounded individual. Then, in 2007, he captured footage of what he believed to be UFOs on his cell phone from his apartment in Suffolk, Virginia. There was a number of orbs. One orb was solid white. There was 2 orbs. The other orb changed color rapidly and was across the street about 300 feet up. He recalled feeling as though him seeing these things was wrong. But he posted them online anyway, and that's when the problems began. He woke up from a nap that afternoon, and someone was trying to get into his apartment. The doorknob was moving, and he could hear scratching. He asked, "Who is it?" But there was no answer. He had a firearm on the table. He's a Marine, and amen, God bless him. He had a firearm there, but he could not move to get it. All he could do was look around. And talk. He couldn't physically move his body. Then he heard a voice through the door tell him, quote, "You don't need that weapon. We won't harm." So that event did occur, and then Copeland soon began experiencing missing time. I did a video on missing time. Go check that out. He could not account for 4 hours during a 48-hour period of time. He soon began keeping a log of notes and sketches, and his memory of the missing time began to return. He recalled being in a room with a woman whose features were not completely human. She had black eyes and an elongated skull. Another memory was that he was in a room somewhere alone. Then, after this with the woman, he was standing on his balcony waving at a cylindrical ship. So it was in fact a UFO situation. A lot of people, whenever they you post something online and then somebody's messing with you, a lot of people think that would be the Men in Black. But to be perfectly honest, this, he waved at a cylindrical ship, so yeah, it was a UFO. Now, Copeland says that his abduction experiences have affected him in a profoundly positive way and have left him with the desire to be a better person. And that's cool. Terrell Copeland had a much better alien experience than most. He's had many more experiences since then. He's gotten videos of lights changing color in the sky and other things, a saucer, that kind of thing. And who are we to dispute him? Dude's a U.S. Marine. He's not, as far as we know, he's not suffering from any kind of PTSD or any other mental illnesses. The fact, in my opinion, for my part, the fact that he's a U.S. military member, specifically a Marine, says that he's a grounded individual and he's not making shit up. Could he be? Sure. Is he? No. The videos are there. The photos are there. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, the fact that he was a staunch denier and now suddenly he's a believer, something changed his mind. That's all I got to say. The Chris Bledsoe alien abduction from Fayetteville, North Carolina, 2007. Now, I left North Carolina around 2005. So I know that area quite well. Just saying. Excuse me. Okay, on January 8th, 2007, Chris Bledsoe Sr., a successful builder and commercial pilot, was well liked and respected in his community. On the day of the strange events, he was fishing with 4 other men: Donnie Ackerman, Gene Robinson, David McDonald, and Chris Bledsoe Jr., his son. Ackerman, Robinson, and Donald worked for Bledsoe as framing subcontractors and had just finished a large beach home. They'd gotten paid the day of the encounter, so they were in good spirits. So they decided to go fishing. All right, now, as the 4 men were fishing, Bledsoe decided to walk about 75 yards to the tree line. While he stood looking into the sky, he was surprised to see in the distance 2 orange lights. As he wondered at the lights, he was standing there staring and wondering what they were. A third light zoomed into place on the left of the other 2. It was like really quick, boom, in the blink of an eye, it was there. Now, you're going to hear 2 different stories here. One is from Bledsoe. The other is from the people around him. So I'm going to try to meld them together here. Bledsoe was excited and apprehensive about what he had seen, so he hurried back to the riverbank to tell his fishing partners. Now, here's the thing. He thought he was gone something like 20 minutes. In actuality, it was like 3 or 4 hours. His son, Bledsoe Jr., went to investigate. Bledsoe Jr. went into the woods to find him, and he was gone for a long time. When Bledsoe Sr. returned, he was telling them about it, and they said, "Well, Junior went over here to find you," so he went to look for his kid. He walked about 75 yards south to the tree line, and he was calling for his son, and there was no answer. When he stepped into the woods about 10 feet, calling him, his son stood up from under some low bushes he had been hiding in. He grabbed his father, crying. This 17-year-old kid, he's not a kid. He's not a little kid. He's 17 years old. He's 6'3". He's a big guy. He said, "Dad, where have you been? I've been hiding here for a long time. There were 2 creatures walking around looking for me. I could not move when they looked at me. I was so scared. They were picking up bottles and other trash on the ground all the time, staying within 20 feet of me. They were watching me." Now this is crazy, and it gets worse. So, of course, when they got back, the doggies. When they got back, the men they were like, "Screw this!" They all jumped in the truck and drove off. Apparently, the men saw the creatures as well. I'm going to get to that here in a minute. Okay, here 2 of the other guys reported seeing the same creature, but they only saw the red eyes walking within the woodline in the direction where the kid went. So, when the 5 of them left in the truck, 2 of the guys in the back saw something, and they reported that they saw a glowing creature running on all 4s, chasing the truck. Yeah, this gets weird, let me tell you. So they took off and they went home. After they arrived home, Bledsoe heard his dogs barking in the backyard, so they were going crazy. One of his dogs, a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, sped into the forest with the others following. And this is not uncommon. People in North Carolina hunt a lot. They all have dogs. Every freaking house has dogs. It's like the entire state has dogs. Don't ask me. I was there for 6 years. I still don't understand it. I like dogs myself, and I understand hunting dogs, but it's like the state hobby or something, growing dogs. Anyway, one of his dogs sped into the forest. It was a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, sped into the woods, and the rest of the dogs followed. After tramping through the woods in search of his dogs for a time, Bledsoe came upon a sight that was beyond belief. Right before him stood a creature. He was frozen in his tracks. The being appeared to be the size of a child and was only 3 to 4 feet from him. And keep in mind, the woods in that area are very dense. You can step around a tree and see something you would never known was even there. So that makes sense. The being was only about 3 feet tall, and its appearance was like it had been dipped in glass. It was almost translucent. But the being did have red eyes, which coincides with what the other men said. In a moment, the other dogs arrived on the scene, and the being was nowhere to be seen. It immediately left. Excuse me. The kid later stated that while he was in the backyard of the Bledsoe house, he saw 2 red orbs floating through the woods. He claimed that he saw a number of small beings emerge from the woods near the house. The whole thing gets weird. Now, he did go under regressive hypnosis, and during the regression, Bledsoe uncovered a number of pertinent and important facts. He described being taken against his will by 4 tall, skinny aliens, at least 7 feet tall. He remembered being in a dark, round room in which he could see various lights and controls. Apparently, the small alien beings seen by Bledsoe and his son were children of the taller beings. And these children apparently like playing in the woods. Go figure. They're kids playing in the woods. He had also revealed that the aliens had been in his house. That would freak me. And the articles that I read and I compared and I tried to because every article I read had a lot of different stuff in it. So I tried to find the common items. One article said that he had failed polygraph tests about this. So I don't know how accurate that is. I don't know. But if he was lying, it's a hell of a hoax, and he got everybody involved in it. That's all I'm saying. When you have reports like this, but then you have other witnesses seeing it, for this to be a hoax, they would all have to be in on it. This is I couldn't find out her last name because it was nowhere in the article that I read. And the source of the article that I read was impeccable, so I'm going to go with this particular story. The woman's name is Giovanna. She's from Italy. I did a video a few weeks ago about the alleged alien hybridization program, which many people report as part of their UFO abduction experiences. To date, there has been no real evidence that such a program actually exists. Until now. This woman by the name of Giovanna, she lives in Italy, she's Italian, claimed to have been abducted by aliens. And of course, she claimed that these aliens impregnated her, and the doctors were very, very skeptical, to say the least. Her abduction experiences evidently started when she was 4 years old, according to her. And so, whenever somebody says stuff like that, you automatically become skeptical. And I understand that. Over the course of her life, she was visited and abducted many times, this according to her, and the evidence of these abductions mounted over time. So over time, they kept getting a little bit more evidence here and there, and finally, now we've got this. This evidence included marks on her body, which again is not conclusive because the marks technically could have been faked or could have come from anywhere. A glowing, here's where it starts getting good though. A glowing substance like phosphorescent powder, but not phosphorus. They analyzed it, and it turns out it was a silicate mica substance, a silicate base with mica, which had been made magnetic through presumably being subjected to a particle accelerator. This woman could not have made this substance at home. Right here, people's, flags started coming up at that point. She had photos and videos of UFOs that visited her, and again, in our modern society, these can be faked. Let's call a skunk a skunk. She could have faked them. She has photos of one of the aliens that visited her. And again, this could be faked, but it was very reminiscent of the other videos and photos
that people are catching down in Mexico. Jaime Musan he's got a number of them online that are very, very compelling, and this one looked a lot like that. So then they found a brain implant that nobody can explain. Nobody knows how it got in there, but it's there. Then comes the most compelling part. Doctors were examining her and they found a cardiac rhythm indicative of a baby, but they could not find a baby anywhere inside her. The cardiac rhythm said there was a baby present, but there was no baby on the scans or anything like that. She experienced complications of this, and this necessitated an abortion. Her health was in danger, so they opted to go for an abortion. There was a placenta-like substance, and inside the placenta was a fetus that did not appear human. A fetus that did not appear human. It had 2 arms and 2 legs with a torso, but the head did not appear anything like a human fetus. It had 3 digits on each hand instead of a human's 5 fingers. And the head didn't look anything like a human being. It looked kind of like a big frog with the big eyes and the whole 9 yards. Doctors are at a loss to explain any of this, especially the fetus. Giovanna claims that the aliens who abducted her have explained that the hybrid program is their attempt to save their species from extinction. So something is going on, and they're trying to make these human-alien hybrids because that's the only way their species can survive. I don't know what all that's about. If anybody does, please put it in the comments. I'm sure we'd be glad to read it. It's one thing to claim to have been abducted. Marks can be faked as well as photos and videos. We all know that. That glowing powder is something serious to consider. The brain implant is shocking, to say the least. Those 2 things would be very, very difficult to dismiss. But an abnormal fetus that no doctor thus far can explain, that is some serious.
Hey there, Grumpy Old Fart here. I'm doing an alien abduction video, but it's not really about a specific abduction. I'm titling this one for your consideration because lately I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that I talk to, not online, but in person, about, oh yeah, all those alien abductees, they're all kooks, they're all crazy, you know. So I'm going into this one. Here we go. Many people think that alien abductees are all hoaxers and or kooks, and I cannot tell you how much I disagree with that assessment. I'm not going to go so far as to say that I believe every claim of alien abductions. You know, to be sure that there are tons of crazy people out there, and I dare say a good many of these claimants are hoaxers. The fact that some people are crazy and some people are hoaxers does not diminish the fact that some of these abduction claims are just too real to ignore. As a matter of fact, I did a video a long time ago when I first started this alien category on my channel. I did a video called UFOs Evidently, and in that video, I talked about the end of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall came down, and information started coming from behind the Iron Curtain. Turns out, the Soviets and their Eastern Bloc countries were investigating UFOs and had UFO abductee stories just the same as we did. If it's a hoax, if it's a real hoax, then that's a hell of a thing to hoax. I'm just saying. Go watch that video. You'll see what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into it all here, but you understand what I'm talking about. I want to talk about something. I found an article the other day. There's a website called Nova, and they do all kinds of stuff. They put out the case files of Bud Hopkins. He's a legendary ufologist who investigated UFO cases. And Bud Hopkins is a legend, a real legend in the UFO community. This guy was a pioneer in research in this phenomenon. So, at least listen to what he says.
But before we get into that, I found some information on that website that I want to get into. But before we get into that, let me set it up for you here, okay? A little bit of context. If you're not a parent, imagine that you are. Or if you have a very young sibling, brother, sister, or if you babysit children, if you're a young person and you babysit children, imagine that the child is very young and is scared to death, refuses to go to sleep. When you ask why, the child explains that the little people are coming to hurt them. Their little people are going to come and hurt them. You ask further questions and the child shows you marks on their body that make no sense. How would that make you feel? As a parent, I can tell you that if my son had this type of experience, it would scare the piss out of me. And I'd be setting up an ambush for Mr. E.T. We'd have definitive proof in the form of a freaking corpse. Let me tell you, Mr. E.T. would not get away. He would not get away with it. Now, I realize that many of you might scoff at that, but let me read you an excerpt from these Nova case files of Bud Hopkins, the legendary ufologist who investigated abduction cases. All right, here we go. I'm reading this verbatim. There's a letter, a woman writing about her child. She was so concerned. Her daughter's 3 years old. When she was putting her daughter to bed, the little girl cried and said, "I want to hide." And the woman asked why. And she said, "I'm hiding because the little people are going to get me." This really frightened the mother, and she asked what happened with the little people. In the letter, she writes, the mother wrote, she told me they come into her room, take her outside, that they have big eyes, and that she went up into the sky with the man. I asked what happened up there, and she said they took me to see the doctor. The next day, the woman she saw on a television program, her mother was sitting there, a cover of a book about abductions with a face of an alien. The little girl jumped to her knees, pointed at the TV, shouting, "That's them, Mommy, the people." She covered her eyes and said, "I'm scared, Mommy. I've never seen such fear in Nicole before." Within that same week, she drew many faces with only very large, dark eyes. I also noticed at the time, while undressing her, 3 tiny raised pin-like marks near her navel and the same under her left nostril. The same day, she also had a pretty bad nosebleed. Since this all occurred, every now and then she mentions other things such as, "They take my jammies off, they hurt me," etc. I realize you receive many letters of this kind, some of which are phony, but believe me, this is not made up. If this is all really happening to my little girl, please give me some advice as to how to help her deal with these visitations. I know you're a very busy man, but please perhaps a short response to my letter may ease my anxiety a little. Mr. Hopkins, could this really be true? Thank you. Sincerely, blah, blah, blah. There's no way that one can read these letters without responding. And this idea that something like that is made up by a publicity seeker or whatever, as skeptics like to say, is just absolutely absurd. I have worked with some of these people afterwards, referred them to other investigators, and I think we've brought some relief for them in helping them explore what really did happen in their lives. Now that's the excerpt that I read. And if you're a parent, that just grabs you by the heart. And I tell you something, she didn't go to the newspapers for publicity. She didn't go to, as a matter of fact, her name and most of this stuff is redacted. She didn't go to the newspaper. She didn't go find a magazine or she didn't go public with it. She wrote to an investigator. She's not seeking publicity. Okay? This excerpt is online with many others. Check them out for yourself. Put yourself in that mother's place. What would you do? I'm not suggesting that you take every alien abduction story at face value. What I'm saying is that there are a great many of these stories which have been thoroughly investigated by competent and knowledgeable researchers. I talk about a great many such cases on my channel. Go check them out. I have multiple channels. Check them out. And if I may, a gentle reminder of why I started talking about UFO and alien abduction cases in the first place. The U.S. Navy and then later the U.S. government announced that UFOs, now called UAPs, are real and that their pilots had encountered them. Congress is having hearings on the subject. Is it too much of a reach to assume that the pilots of those craft are studying us? We study primates. We study all kinds of different animals. Maybe we're the animals to these aliens. That's all I'm saying. And if you're doing field research, you collect study. You collect samples. You collect specimens. Maybe that's what these beings are doing. Again, I'm not saying take it all seriously. Not every case seriously, but there's got to be something to it. How many alien abductee cases are there around the world? If it's a hoax, that's a big fucking hoax. It's all around the world, and it's been going on for centuries. I'm just saying. I hope this gives you something to think about, all right? I hope this finds everybody well. You folks have a good day. God bless one and all.